we have some people who joined through YouTube. I also understand that a lot of people who joined on YouTube are not Russian speaking, and that's exactly why you have to bear with us. We will speak English today until the very end, but don't be worried. We will have also a separate webinar in Russian in a week's time, maybe sooner. So we will make an announcement about Russian webinar very soon. So let's kick off. Sergey, can you still hear me?
Yeah. Yes, I hope everyone can hear me as well. Glad to have you on our session. Let's start with the slides. We have a lot of material today. While Sergey is switching on the slides, I'll just mention that probably will not go into super technical details, but we just want to give you an overview of all the threats and opportunities which the new tax reform brings, and probably pay attention to really critical things, what you should be afraid of and what otherwise gives you some good news, and we'll be always happy as always to discuss more details tete-a-tete.
Great. So let me turn on the slides and let's keep going. So we have today, oh, it's wrong slide deck, sorry. Nope, still wrong.
Yeah, just play from current slide, it will be easier.
I tried, yeah.
No.
It still plays from the same slide.
Nice.
Okay,
no slides today.
I make a quick thing. I will just delete the wrong slides and it doesn't work at all. Okay, interesting. Then
yeah, what fixing the stuff, maybe let me give you a super brief introduction. As you know, we took we had certain role in drafting the law, so we will be able to give you some interesting insights. And overall, well, the topic of today's session is basically not just about the amendments to tax code, which we'll go through in detail. Very briefly, what are the news related to this stuff? First, the tax amnesty law most likely will be passed by the parliament within the next 3 months. So this is a completely different story, different law. This was the direct instruction by the president. So we're expecting the law to appear somewhat a month or two from now, just to be able to check what is the text. In terms of the automatic exchange, no developments, and we still expect that later during this year, the treaty will be finally signed. And then this will be a process of about 1 to 2 years of implementation. So we do not expect information exchange in this year for sure. And maybe even for the next year, there will be no information exchange. So what actually happened recently is that the president signed the law last Thursday, a week ago. Now it has been published, so it is a law. In certain scope, it is already effective. In certain scope, it will become effective on the 1st July and on the 1st January next year. The text to the original, the link to the original text is here on the slides. You have it on your slides in our news channel. So feel free to check what actually has been adopted. Sergey? Yeah, basically, we have 2 big blocks just to make your task easier for understanding. The first block is about your new obligations. So basically what new has been passed by the parliament and which headaches you might have in the future. First of all, this is of course a big CFC topic. We'll probably not go into a very specific analysis of the text. The very important key message is basically everything which exists outside of the country in terms of legal entities or structures without personality, almost everything should qualify as the CFC, meaning the notification and annual reporting requirements. In very rare cases, it might happen that your structure will not qualify as the CFC, but do not believe and do not trust the advisors who will say, who will tell you that discretionary trusts help, insurance wrappers help. So most likely, in the most cases, this is not true. What is true is that certain persons will be exempt of the CFC reporting obligations. This would be the hired employees of yours, so the auditors, the directors, the trustees, and so on. This is the real exception, which is specifically designed in the law. Outside, most likely, all of your foreign companies and structures are CFCs, subject to notification and reporting. Yeah, but yeah, Sergey?
I think, yeah, specifically wanted to highlight one point about structures like trusts and foundations and insurance policies. There is a provision in the legislation that under certain conditions, trusts are not CFCs. So specifically, the law is saying that if you don't have right to income from the structure, if you don't have control in the structure, then it's not your CFC. And we know from the legislative process that there was a significant lobbying coming from let's say the wealthy groups to make CFC exemptions specifically for trusts. And the task of the Ministry of Finance and the task of the Parliament was to put in place certain exceptions, which in real life will not work, because they didn't want to give real exceptions to the oligarchs, let's put it this way. And that's why when you read exceptions to the rules, you can notice that they're almost impossible to achieve in real life. Of course, in a discretionary trust, you can get rid of right to income, but it's almost impossible to get rid of control, because control in the definition of CFC is a possibility to influence either distribution of profits or management of the company or appointment of decision makers. So factually, in any discretionary setup and also in any insurance structure, in any foundation structure, the founder, the settlor, or the beneficiaries will retain control. We know that now in Ukraine, a lot of tax advisors are pushing towards discretionary structures, discretionary irrevocable trust, for example, but we are extremely skeptical about it. And even if on paper you can construct anything you like, in real life you can hardly achieve a structure where you don't have any control, because as a matter of practice, I mean, business people want to retain control and want to retain hidden mechanisms of control. So believe it or not, but control will remain, and this means your CFC structure still exists.
Yeah, and maybe just to give you the precise wording of the law, because this is indeed very important. Initially, there were 3 conditions defining whether you have control in a trust or not. And in the final version, there are 2 more added. The first literally says factual control. So as soon as there is factual control, there is control. And second is there should be no right, in order to be exempt from CFC, there should be no right solely or jointly with other beneficiaries to terminate the structure. And this right is granted basically by many trust legislations, regardless of what you put in the trust deed, which means that in such jurisdictions, a priori, this is impossible to have an exempt trust. Okay, now switch to basically definition of the taxable profit. As we mentioned, everything would be a CFC, and you will have to notify and report. We'll touch on this a bit later. In which case you will have to pay the tax. Well, first of all, the tax base for the CFC purposes is increased by income, reduced by dividends or liquidation proceeds received from Ukrainian sources, from Ukrainian PEs, from other CFCs, and so on, and it can be adjusted to either direction in case of non-arm's length transactions. What is very important is that when the CFC profit is not taxed at all, first of all, well, I would say that probably the biggest and the most important news on the whole CFC topic is the euro 2 million income exemption. So whenever all income of your CFCs taken together do not exceed 2 million euro, most likely this threshold will work for each calendar year. You should not care about CFC taxation at all. So as soon as you do not exceed the threshold, you are fine. This threshold is very high. So just for comparison purposes, in Russia, this is something like 120,000, so almost 20 times lower. So you should not care about taxation. What is very important is that the law refers to income, not to profit. However, because the CFC profit will have to be calculated under the local rules, so GAAP, whatever, or IFRS, there is big chance that for some amounts, for some transactions like capital gains, in fact, income would be profit. Which actually makes this threshold even more important, because we, in many cases, we will apply it to de facto profit but not income. Amongst other exemptions, we have the at least 13% effective taxation, or at least 50% active income, like in Russia, the same way. And we also have the exemption for the listed CFC. This exemption covers not only these listed entity itself, but everything which is, the underlying levels, so all direct and indirect subsidiaries, as well as a pure charity. But this 2 million euro is probably the biggest news. There is some unclear wording in the Ukrainian text. So literally it says 2 million of income as of the end of reporting period, which might you think that you can accumulate this 2 million in a couple of years and then become subject to CFC taxation. But the tax authorities and some like people who were originally drafting the law, they say, no, we will apply it to the calendar year. So most likely this threshold will stand.
Maybe important remark to add here, when you calculate your CFC profit, you have to take financial statements of the foreign company or of the foreign structure. And in most cases, we will be talking about IFRS, so International Financial Reporting Standards. And in IFRS, you have a lot of transactions which are booked even if there is no realized profit. So it's a fair value adjustment. If you have securities and these securities grow in value at the end of the year, then in your financial statements, you will see profit from increase of value of securities. If they drop in value, you will see loss from these securities. And Ukrainian CFC rules will not distinguish between realized gains and unrealized gains. So it means that whenever your BVI company or whenever your trust is making unrealized capital gain at the end of the year, on 31st of December, you see it in your books. You don't feel the money yet because you didn't sell your securities. They just grew in value. It's a purely paper gain, but you will have to pay tax on this CFC profit simply because Ukrainian tax rules will not make any adjustments to the foreign IFRS. They will take it as is.
Okay, now we switch, I guess, to the calculation. Yeah, very briefly on what actually you do. What are your requirements under the CFC rules? First, you notify the CFCs. So whenever you acquire a share or control, whenever you get rid of it, within 60 days, you have to report.
And even if you have exempt CFC, then you still have to report it.
Yes, correct. All CFCs. Doesn't matter whether you pay tax on it or not. It is important that it is not directly specified what do you do with the CFCs which existed as of the 1st January next year. But logically, you have to report within 60 days of the next year, which means something like 3rd March or around that. So as soon as you do not do that, you may be subject to certain fines. And jumping slightly ahead, it is important that the law waives the right to penalize you for these non-compliance in 2021 and 22. And generally, it might happen that the whole CFC block of rules will be postponed for 2 years, as it's like the rumors are between
Sergey, we lost you. Sergey?
Sergey, can you hear me?
Sergey, let's keep going. I think it
Okay.
works now.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Very good. So basically, we're done with the obligations under the CFC rules. There are some minor interesting information about video conferencing with foreign authorities, with the ability to provide documents in English. So Ukrainian tax authorities are trying to become more civilized and just get rid of some Soviet way of doing the things. And what is important is that in many aspects, the law directly says that the burden of proof lies with the tax authority and so on. So it is really, we just know the psychology of these people. It is really in the mentality of them to simplify the rules and really make tax authorities to be responsible for proving some things. Okay, let's go on, Sergey, with the slides. This slides basically covers the monetary side of the story. Which taxes do you pay and which penalties do you pay? In terms of the taxes, the Ukrainian companies which act as the controlling persons pay the standard 18% tax. This is clear. Whenever the controlling persons are the individuals, the tax rate might be either the standard one for the dividends, which is 10.5%, or the double amount of that, around 20%. So the specific tax rate depends at the end of the day on when do you distribute the profit, which became the CFC profit. If you do that during the year when the profit was created or during the following 2 years, you will pay this minimal tax of 10.5%. Otherwise, if the profit remains with the company for a longer period of time, it will be 20%. So basically the law just stimulates you to distribute the dividends quite quickly within basically 2 years after you gained this profit. The system of penalties is quite complicated. You have a lot of text here you can study later, but the idea is that for non-notification of the CFC, you can pay around 24,000 euro, which is a lot, which is like about 20 times more than in Russia. And for non-filing of the CFC reports, you can pay from 80 euro to from 800 euro to 80,000. So the penalties are very huge. So please be careful. And again, I will repeat that the penalties apply only from the calendar period of year 2023. So yeah, within next 2 years, basically, the penalties should not scare you. So yeah, now we switch basically to the different rules. Permanent establishment rules existed in Ukraine forever. However, they were not really working. And we showed that on this gray upper side part of the slide. There was no exchange of information. The permanent establishment were never registered by foreign companies, and the tax authorities could not do that in a mandatory way. And of course, because there are no physical assets in Ukraine or there is no trans-border enforcement instrument, nothing worked. From the second part of this year, the situation will change. I would say that entirely the whole mechanism will work only after the automatic exchange kicks in, which will happen in around 2 years. Only then the Ukrainian authorities will really get the access to the figures on the profit, to who earns them, how or earns them, and so on. And after that, the tax authorities will already have the right to register the PEs of the foreign companies, and through the same CRS mechanism to enforce the decision to collect tax abroad, which is very, very complicated today. So we believe that the permanent establishment rules will really become a working mechanism quite soon.
Yeah, so just two classical examples where permanent establishment can become a problem. Example number one, there is a complex foreign structure. Let's say I see a lot of companies in the UK structured as UK LLPs, or there are some Canadian LLPs, so you have some BVI and other companies, and all these companies are actually doing some active business. So there is trading, there are trading transactions, there are some services, and of course in these foreign structures there is absolutely nobody. There are just some nominee directors who are moving paper from one table to the other and putting their signatures per instructions of the client. And there is an army of people who are practically doing all these transactions, agreeing on trades, signing contracts, etc. And from Ukrainian standpoint today, all these companies in the UK, in Canada, in BVI, they are supposed to pay taxes as if all this profit is generated in Ukraine. But the Ukrainian tax authorities simply don't have tools to force them to pay these taxes. When CRS comes into play, it will be almost impossible to seize these companies, because most likely these companies will be marked in CRS reporting as active. And active companies are not disclosed in CRS. However, if individuals are disclosing these companies themselves, because these companies are CFC, question will come from Ukrainian tax authorities, hey, but you have a bunch of foreign companies, you pay 10.5% tax on these companies, but why the hell there is no personnel, there is no substance, all business is actually happening in Ukraine, so we actually want to tax this company, these foreign companies, as if these companies earned all their income in Ukraine. So this is one way how Ukrainian tax authorities will find out through CFC reporting. And the second way is that banks, where you are banking these companies, where all this money are moving from UK LLP to Canadian LLP to BVI, these banks will notice that something is wrong, that actually Ukrainian permanent establishment rules became much stricter, and they will force you the banks will force you to somehow legalize and open up these companies and start paying taxes as you should. So it's still, let's say, not as, these rules are still not that watertight, and it's still possible to escape them. Let's put it this way, but it's definitely 100 times more difficult to escape these rules from 2021. So keep an eye on them. It's actually touching a lot of structures. And of course, the other classical example of permanent establishment rules is when Ukrainian shareholder has, let's say, a BVI company or whatever other foreign company, and this company is not doing any business. It holds only bankable assets, and the Ukrainian individual is giving instructions to the bankers what to buy, what to sell. He has signatory powers on the account, or he's instructing directors of the company what to do. So in this case, again, this company is factually managed from Ukraine, and under the old rules, it was very difficult or even impossible to tax it. Under the new rules, it will be super easy to tax, and the accounts of this company will be disclosed through automatic information exchange, also through CFC reports, and Ukrainian tax authorities can, like this, declare these foreign companies as Ukrainian taxpayers, and instead of 10.5% tax, you will factually pay around 30% tax.
Mm-hmm. Basically, the next block of rules is quite identical to the permanent establishment ones. This is the full tax migration of companies. So my personal feelings in that these companies will start working later, simply because the Ukrainian authorities will have to understand how it works at all. What is good for us is that now we have the option of voluntarily migration of foreign companies to Ukraine, which can give you a lot of non-tax driven benefits. So first of all, let's imagine you have some IT business which has to cooperate with different counter agents in European Union, I mean globally, whatever. What can you do? You can, for example, establish the Swiss company, just sign out of the Swiss tax authority and sign in Ukraine, just to change the country where you pay taxes on your income. You keep the perfect reputation in Switzerland. You keep the very high asset protection because the disputes will be resolved in Swiss courts, not in the Ukrainian ones. You can keep all of your funds on Swiss bank accounts, so you can even avoid having any Ukrainian accounts. And basically everything, and you don't have to create any artificial substance abroad because it is indeed in Ukraine, and you simply tell everyone the truth. So the only thing where you suffer, you start paying Ukrainian taxes, as you have to do in any scenario in the future world. Basically the idea is to have all these benefits driven by the foreign jurisdiction legislations, but keep the substance in Ukraine where it always was.
One reason why it's very fancy to have a foreign company and make it resident in Ukraine is when you want to have a very cool holding structure. So actually in the past, people were mostly creating their holding structures in Cyprus, for example. Some people were doing it in the Netherlands. Some people were putting it, I know, somewhere else. And now it makes much less sense to have a foreign structure. If you have a foreign company and you make it Ukrainian taxpayer, a Ukrainian tax resident company, then this holding entity can invest in Ukrainian subsidiaries, in European subsidiaries, in American subsidiaries, in African subsidiaries, wherever you want, and dividends from these subsidiaries will not be taxable. So all the incoming dividend stream coming to this Ukrainianized holding structure will not be taxable in Ukraine. And we will talk about these rules later. And then to pay dividends from this company to Ukrainian shareholders, you only pay 6.5%. So instead of 10% or 20% or 30%, you can actually minimize your effective Ukrainian taxation down to 6.5%, and you still keep your asset protection because this foreign holding vehicle is giving you foreign courts, foreign laws, foreign contracts, foreign bank accounts. So you don't care about Ukraine except for taxes. And you can even combine these Ukrainianized foreign holding companies with different asset protection tools. So you can have, for example, this company, and you can put a trust on top, or you can put a foundation on top, or you can put different other asset protection mechanisms, and this will not cost you more taxes. You still pay 6.5%, and we will explain you why in a few minutes. So it's actually one of the tools which we will actively propose to our clients. We already tested this in Russia. We already tested this tax migration with other jurisdictions. So we were moving Swiss companies to Cyprus. We were moving Jersey companies to Switzerland. We were moving Dutch companies to Hungary. So we have a lot of experience moving tax residents of foreign companies, enjoying all the legal benefits and reducing taxes. So it's quite a cool thing that we suggest you to use.
Mm-hmm. I think we'll start, maybe we'll speed up slightly to come finally to good news, which Sergey started to touch. The principal purpose test was amended at the very last moment during the final voting in the parliament. Now it applies only to the transactions which relate to non-residents. So this test doesn't apply to purely Ukrainian situations, but there are some other instruments like transfer pricing and others. But here, basically, you go through this algorithm and ask yourself whether the operation with non-resident intended to increase assets, so to earn money, in other words. If not, then basically you suffer. Is tax saving one of the principal goals of operations? So was it commercially driven, or you thought that tax saving is one of the goals? Again, if yes, then if tax saving is a reason, then you suffer. And finally, whether you would enter into the same transaction under the similar conditions with the non-related party. A very simple question. Again, if yes, then everything is fine and you do not pay additional taxes. But if the question is not to one of those three questions, then basically you have tax implications and your tax base is increased effectively by the amount of your expenses incurred.
So I think one of the questions from CFC standpoint that you can ask, why the hell are you doing, for example, a trust structure? Does it make any sense? And if for the last 20 years, almost nobody in Ukraine were doing discretionary irrevocable trusts, and then suddenly everybody rushes to create such structures, is it because you have some economic or family reason, or is it because of tax reasons? So I would say statistically, there is a proof that it's purely tax driven, and these principal purpose tests can actually also block or let's say give a very negative connotation to anti-CFC structuring. Let's keep going.
Yeah, this is the slide which concerns the source taxation on disposals. So on the left side, we have a Ukrainian business without real estate as the main asset. Just to keep it really short, in the vast majority of cases, whenever there is a double tax treaty between Ukraine and the company of the seller, this situation will be overruled by the treaty and there will be no Ukrainian taxation. So here, basically the rule says that if the seller sells the Ukrainian company, which is the object of sale, then Ukraine withholds the tax. But this, the treaty normally protects you from this situation. On the right side, there is a situation when the principal value of the business is the Ukrainian real estate. The rule is drafted in a bit weird way because you basically have to comply with two conditions in order to trigger Ukrainian taxation. First, the object of sale should be the foreign company where its value is primarily deriving from the share in the Ukrainian company. So this the requirement number one. And the requirement number two is that there is a Ukrainian entity which in turn owns the assets where the value of real estate, again, is higher than 50%. So we have found with our Ukrainian colleagues at least 7 scenarios where you can theoretically play with the wording of the law to avoid the situation. But again, coming back to the previous slide, this rule on the principal purpose test will probably kill any attempts to get rid of the taxation in this particular case. So generally speaking, because the double tax treaties do not protect yourself from Ukrainian taxation in case of the indirect sale of real estate, we assume that in the vast majority of cases, you will have to pay taxes whenever you sell Ukrainian real estate directly or indirectly. The only way out where this is commercially driven, where you can legally avoid this taxation is basically by listing of the object of sale. So in case of the shares you sell are the shares which are listed in one of the authorized stock exchanges, then you basically can make this sale without the Ukrainian tax implications. But this list doesn't exist yet. It still has to be approved by the government.
Yeah, I think one of the interesting things to mention here is that there is no mechanism in the Ukrainian law what you do if a non-resident sells Ukrainian company, real estate company to another non-resident. And most advisors will start saying that, hey, this is actually a great solution. A foreigner sells to the foreigner. There is no tax agent in Ukraine. There is no withholding mechanism. So nobody can tax anything. But in real life, it will not work this way, because in real life, a foreign buyer of this real estate company will tell to the seller, hey, actually, what I'm buying is a structure pregnant with capital gains tax. So you're actually shifting your risk of tax, the seller's tax risk, to me, to the buyer. I want a discount for this, and my discount will be equal to the capital gains tax paid in Ukraine. So in real life, and we've been through such situations, we've been through such deals already in many jurisdictions, in Russia, in Kazakhstan, in US, in Australia, in Canada, even in China. As soon as you have such deals under these new rules, you will effectively lose, either by paying taxes or by having a reduced price on the sale. So let's keep going.
Constructive dividends, an entirely new term introduced into the Ukrainian legislation. Basically, there are two groups of cases where this can kick in. Basically, the threat is that the amounts which Ukrainian resident paid and thinks is deductible becomes, so requalifies as the dividends, which is now not deductible expense, plus you suffer from additional withholding tax. So the first group of cases is where the Ukrainian company distributes profit, which is basically should always be the dividends. And second is when you create deductible expenses through capital decrease, exit from capital, or buyback. The second group of questions is when the Ukrainian company either buys or sells products, services, or goods to or from the non-resident, and this is a non-arm's length transaction. So accordingly, depending whether this was the purchase or the sale, the amount which is above or below the market can qualify as the dividend, and as a result, we even can expect there will be some cases where you can suffer from a double taxation. So first of all, you will not deduct the expenses, therefore incur 18% taxation on this adjusted tax base. And secondly, you will pay additional 15% as a withholding tax on these constructive dividends. So these double taxation is not solved. Maybe we will help fixing this in the new version of law, but so far this is a very dangerous rule which you have to take care of.
Yeah, and it goes very far. It is very closely linked with transfer pricing. So whenever you have a transfer pricing adjustment, when you under-receive certain profits in Ukraine, this will definitely hit you as a hidden dividend, the constructive dividend. And to give you another example, let's say you have a Ukrainian company which owns some asset, and you want to sell this asset to a sister company. So you are a shareholder, you own two Ukrainian companies, and from one company to the other, you are selling an asset. And traditionally, you would probably try to do it at a nominal value, because you say, this is my asset, I sell it to myself. There is no reason to actually sell at fair market value. Now, under these constructive dividend rules, this will qualify as a hidden dividend distribution, because the seller will first make an adjustment, an increase in price to fair market value. And second, this increase will be deemed to be distributed to the shareholder and taxed as a dividend. So you have actually double taxation, corporate level taxation, and then taxation at the level of individual. And it is nothing new in the Western world. You have such constructive dividend rules everywhere, in the US, in the Netherlands, in Luxembourg, in Switzerland. So it's a very normal thing, very civilized tax concept, but it will mean a lot of changes to the habits of tax reorganizations, which we still have in Ukraine. It will be very difficult to reorganize things at nominal values, because you will immediately get taxed. Sergey, you should unmute. I think you're muted.
Sorry. I was saying that this is a very tiny, small rule, which was not discovered straight away by many advisors. The idea is that whenever the Ukrainian company sells anything basically to one of the jurisdictions which is blacklisted, for example, BVI, the Ukrainian authority says, as a punishment for selling to a blacklisted jurisdiction, you should increase your tax base by 30% of the income received, which means basically that you pay effectively 18% on 30% of income, which is around 6% additional tax burden on all of the income you receive from such blacklisted jurisdictions. So just an additional tax. I think, I mean, you can restructure the contractual basis in a way that you always sell to non-blacklisted jurisdictions and then they resell, but then we're talking about generating some income on your foreign CFCs, which can create some troubles under the different rules. What else do we have? Yeah, basically now we finally come to the good news, the opportunities of the taxpayers, which some of which have to be used. We're pretty convinced with that. The first block of rules, which we created from scratch, it was not planned in the law, is the tax-free liquidations. Sergey, can you switch the slide, please? Basically, after our conversation with the key people responsible for the lawmaking process, we convinced them that the tax amnesty, as it was designed at that point of time, probably will not help the taxpayers. And we definitely need some instrument which would make this transition period not that painful. So the solution was to offer the tax-free liquidation, which was very successful in Russia, for example. The idea is very simple. Whenever you have the foreign company or structure, so basically anything which can qualify as the CFC, you as a shareholder, settler, member, whatever, you can initiate the process of liquidation. This has to be done in this year, in 2020. And then you have to complete the liquidation on time. If you initiate the procedure of liquidation during the first half of this year, so you have yet 1 month to do so, you have time to liquidate the company, so to complete the liquidation until the end of 21. So it will be 1.5 years. If you don't manage to do that, you will have to complete the liquidation this year. You will have to draft IFRS accounts in order to have the liquidation balance under the IFRS rules. And then basically the last requirement is the disclosure to Ukrainian authorities. So it is entirely tax-free for the individual to receive all of the liquidation assets of the liquidated company. It doesn't require repatriation to Ukraine. You can keep all of your assets abroad, but basically the payment for these tax-free nature of this income is disclosure of information. Together with your annual tax return, you will have to show which company was liquidated, which assets you received, and what is the value of these assets. So you will be yourself interested in showing the market value, because this way you create your free, clean, tax-free capital for the future.
Just to highlight these liquidation deadlines, if we're talking about BVI companies, Seychelles, Marshall Island, Jerseys, whatever offshore territories, that's where you can liquidate a company pretty fast. And typically it's enough to have 3 to 6 months to complete the liquidation. So even if you start your liquidation in July or August, or maybe even in September, you can probably make it until the end of December 2020. But when we're talking about Cyprus, Netherlands, Luxembourg, and other jurisdictions, believe me, you will not be able to liquidate within half a year. You have a lot of things to finalize. You have final tax audits. You have final tax returns you have to do. You have to complete your financial statements. The procedure is very difficult and long, so you have no chance to do it. That's why you need this extra year, which means in June, within the next 30 days, you have to initiate the liquidation procedure on these companies. And this means you will have 1.5 years to finalize. Otherwise, you're screwed. You still have certain potential to reorganize and to achieve this tax-free liquidation, but it will require much more tax creativity, much more advice than if you do it just directly.
Yeah, maybe just another, we recommend basically our clients, even to those who have not taken the final decision to go through the tax-free liquidation. We'll tell them, guys, just in case, take the resolution of the general meeting to start the liquidation procedure. That doesn't mean you have to run and complete it as soon as possible, but just in case, to fix this date and not to sign this document backdated later on, just to do this and then later on decide whether you want to complete liquidation or not. So this is a super urgent thing, which is very important to remember.
I think if the president signed this legislation as he must have done a couple of months ago, it would be easier. So we all have to blame him for being so lazy and signing it 2 months is too late.
Okay, now this new rule again, which was drafted entirely by us, is very closely linked to the tax-free liquidation. As soon as you get the assets as the individual income, you don't pay any taxes because of this direct exemption under the tax-free liquidation. And later on, you can decide to keep all of the assets in your hands, which can have a lot of sense in case of real estate, jets, yachts, just to avoid creating material benefit. But you can decide to contribute these assets into a new, clean, correct structure. It can be a foreign company migrated to Ukraine. It can be a tax transparent structure without personality, like trust or partnership, whatever. The question is that if you contribute these assets into this new structure and you account this contribution as a capital contribution, which is very easy to do under the IFRS, which is allowed to be used in this case, then you personally or your relatives, meaning the spouse, children or grandchildren, siblings, successors, even successors, so your new generation, can withdraw these funds as the capital reduction tax-free. So if this $100 which was contributed is transformed into $120 simply because you received some profit, so the first 100 will be extracted tax-free and the remainder will be taxed as profit, of course. And all of these would be converted into Ukrainian hryvnia, of course, for the calculation of these tax-free capital which can be returned, not in US dollars. Participation exemption, a very interesting rule, which basically allows using Ukraine as the holding jurisdiction, which never existed before. Whether this would be a purely Ukrainian company incorporated in Ukraine, or this would be a foreign company tax migrated to Ukraine, doesn't matter. This Ukrainian company will be able to act as the mother company for the daughter companies from any jurisdiction in the world, except those which are blacklisted and do not have double tax treaty with Ukraine. So whenever the participation is at least 10% during calendar year, during the last, meaning the last period of 12 months, you can receive the dividends from those companies or liquidation proceeds tax-free, which means that you can extract the funds through this dividend distribution onto the level of the Ukrainian holding company. And then it's up to you whether to keep this money inside the company forever until you decide to distribute dividends, or if you distribute dividends, in any case, whenever the beneficiary, the ultimate beneficiary on the very top of the structure is Ukrainian tax resident, you will pay only 6.5% tax effectively. Even if you have a lot of different layers and jurisdictions between the Ukrainian company and the beneficial owner, this will not increase any additional tax burden. Maybe, Sergey, if you can switch to the next slide, I think that's exactly what I'm, no, one more. Yeah, that's actually, this shows, this slide shows why you will not have any additional taxation, even in a multi-layer structure. So there will be 6.5 taxation if the Ukrainian company distributing the dividends pays Ukrainian corporate income tax, or 10.5 otherwise. This can be some unified taxpayers and so on. But otherwise, these money which were sent by the Ukrainian company, even if they got stuck somewhere in Cyprus or BVI, they do not qualify as the CFC income. This is the direct exemption in the law. And this does not create any double taxation in hands of the individual whenever this individual gets this money 20 years ahead. So this is an automatic look-through dividend distribution, which requires payment only the minimal withholding tax in Ukraine. Yeah, one slide back. Basically, this is a quite similar concept which refers to other types of passive income, namely interest or royalties. It says basically that the double tax treaty can apply even in the case where the actual recipient of income is the actual recipient is different from the actual beneficial owner. So if we say that the Ukrainian company has to pay the royalty to its mother company in Switzerland, but actually the real substance lies somewhere above in Cyprus, for example, then we just all we need is just two letters by those two companies. One says, I'm not the beneficial owner, the beneficial owner is above, and the beneficial owner says, oh yeah, I'm the real beneficial owner, please apply the tax treaty with me, not with my daughter company. And this way you can basically ignore these layers in the structure in order to apply exactly the double tax treaty with a company which is the real beneficial owner. Just to keep it super simple, we envisage that the royalty or the interest will not be the working instrument to really shift the tax base, simply because no one has the real substance abroad. Therefore, even if you make a quite simple calculation in terms of the effective tax in case of the dividends and in case of the royalties or interest, you will understand that those 6.5% of effective taxation in case of the dividends is even a bit lower and much more safer compared to all these old-fashioned schemes on how to create additional expenses in Ukraine through royalty or interest.
So forget about back-to-back financing structures. They are dead and useless.
Yeah, thanks for making that 30 times shorter. A very brief news. Previously, some advisors said that there is a contradiction between two different articles in the Ukrainian tax code, and there is a chance that you will not be able to deduct the expenses for the purchase of foreign securities. So now this contradiction has been killed. There is simply a reference to one single article which regulates these issues. So it's now much safer for the Ukrainian individual to buy and sell foreign securities and be safe that the expenses will be deducted.
But here we're talking about personal accounts. It's not about structures or CFCs. It's really a rule which clarifies that on your personal account, you can buy and sell security and you can fully deduct the acquisition cost. Let's keep going.
Again, a very tiny but very important amendment. The tax code of Ukraine now specifically is mentioning specifically that as long as the beneficial owner test is not mentioned in the double tax treaty, Ukrainian domestic legislation does not require these beneficial owner status. A bit weird. Again, it works entirely for the benefit of the taxpayers, but the practical implication here is that, for example, if we are talking about the capital gains type of income, we do not have this beneficial ownership requirement in the Article 13 of the treaty. Therefore, it looks like there will be much higher chances to protect such capital gains from Ukrainian taxation whenever the treaty indeed doesn't require the beneficial ownership. Yeah, now coming basically to some practical advice in terms of what do you do in the following months or years. First of all, you have to really get scared because the new tax environment is completely different. So Ukraine jumped straight from the Middle Ages to the postmodern era, using all experience combined in different countries. You definitely have to book the advisors because we already see within these less than 1 week of time, we see a huge demand from our clients to fix their structures. So these demand will further grow, and it might happen that if you wake up somewhere in autumn, it will be definitely too late because all of the advice will be booked and you will not have any time and reserves to finish what you could have done. You have to complete the structure's health checks just to understand what actually you need from your structure. Well, maybe the private personal account will be a simple solution which would work for you. Maybe you would have to create something very big and scary and expensive. But in any case, you will have to transform the structure by, first of all, most likely liquidation of the foreign structures tax-free. Maybe you will have to create a new clean structure and contribute your assets there. You will definitely have to reorganize the way you create reporting for your foreign organizations, because now this will be mandatory under the CFC rules. In case you leave something abroad in terms of the new structures, you will have to create substance there, which would mean your personal relocation abroad. And then probably you will have, maybe you will decide to take part in the tax amnesty and even apply the look-through taxation. Sometimes these look-through approach might help even if you have some foreign elements in your structure. And the most important thing, which is marked red on the right side, is do not believe in the magic decision. So if your advisor says, I have a simple solution for you, everything is fixed, I can create a structure where you would not be a controlling person, this is bullshit. There are no simple solutions. There are no cheap solutions. Unfortunately for the clients, maybe good for us, but definitely not good for the clients. And you will definitely have to suffer to a certain extent. It will be related either to one-off expenses to fix your structure, or this would be additional expenses to maintain it in the future, or you will have to start paying higher taxes, but you will not be able to exist in the offshore era like it was 10 years ago.
So the main suffering is that you will have to change your habits. A lot of habits will not survive, and you will have to create new habits and certainly pay some extra taxes. And of course, one of the main habits most people have is secrecy. So you can forget about it. You cannot hide behind trusts or BVIs or any other sort of structures. Everything will get disclosed, and it means, yeah, you have to completely change your mindset to be able to live in the new environment. And the proper mindset would be that, okay, I show everything I have because I cannot hide it. To be compliant, I have to disclose it, but my new structure will be so protected that nobody can take it. So it's like you have your asset on the table, but it's protected good enough that neither your creditors nor your enemies can attack you and take this structure. So asset protection in a classical sense becomes very important, and asset protection in a sense of secrecy is that. Sergey, you're muted again.
Sorry, I forgot it. So one of the alternative solutions would be a real migration yourself. In order just instead of fixing all of the structures, issues, and so on in your home country, you can just escape. leave to a different country, really relocate. So yeah, we discussed these options for many times. We had a conference specific on this topic with our partners, Migronis, last year. Now they have a lot of work as well. They say that there is a huge demand for leaving Ukraine, like it was in Russia during the first year after the new rules were introduced. I don't personally believe that too many people will leave the country, because there are a lot of opportunities, and I will tell you how basically we can achieve that. We were constantly asked to create some simple algorithms. We try to do that even without big reservations. Whenever your amount of assets is below 5 million and you want to keep them abroad, just to keep on a safe side, to keep this money in a reliable jurisdiction, basically you can forget about structures and keep everything super simple. Personal account, some limitations on the currency control, but they relate only to the transfer of funds from Ukraine to abroad, which probably is not an issue for you. And everything you have to do is to declare income in Ukraine and pay the tax under either roughly 10% if it's dividends, or 20% otherwise. That's the minimal possible taxation in any setup. The biggest issue here is that you will be super limited in terms of deducting your expenses. So if you pay commission to the bank, most likely it will disappear. You cannot use it for reducing the tax base. And secondly, if you incur losses, you're not able to move them forward to the next tax periods, which is the standard thing for the companies. So you can suffer sometimes from these issues, but normally if it's less than 5 million of assets, you will pay so much to maintain the structure that it will make no sense. The second option is that you want to still have this rainy day reserve just for the future or for the next generation, and the amount exceeds, let's say, 5 million. You basically, sorry, that's a small mistake here. This should not be a personal account. This would be the corporate account. But for the generally tax transparent structure like trust or partnership, the idea here is that you do not use the legal entity, but instead you use the structure without legal personality in order not to trigger the Ukrainian corporate taxation. So you benefit from all elements of the corporate account in terms of deduction of expenses, losses carried forward, and so on. And you will, of course, have to notify and report your CFC in Ukraine. But if you do not generate over 2 million euro income, you will not even pay any additional taxes. You will simply pay taxes only after you distribute the profit from the structure to your personal account. So a very working and nicely designed solution. We really believe that a lot of clients will go this way. For any structures where you are not saying we simply have some cash and we want to keep it abroad, but you do have some businesses either in Ukraine or abroad, and you have substance in Ukraine, you can create the holding company in Ukraine. Ideally, this would be the tax migrated structure, which was initially created outside of the country, for example, in Malta, in Cyprus, UK, Switzerland, and you simply migrate this company to Ukraine in order to benefit from the holding company regime, which we were talking about a bit earlier. So you can put all of your assets, including bankable assets and businesses, underneath this Ukrainized holding, and you would basically benefit from tax-free dividends received from such businesses, and afterwards, again, it's only 6.5% of tax whenever you distribute dividends from this holding to your personal account. So quite simple. Of course, there will be some one-off costs in order to implement the structure, because tax migration is not the easiest thing to do, but otherwise it's a very simple solution. You have substance in Ukraine. You do not create any artificial solutions abroad. For the Ukrainian authorities, this is a perfectly visible and taxed structure, but at the same time, you benefit from all these foreign elements like asset protection, financial freedom, and so on.
2 points to mention here. If this Ukrainianized holding company has foreign subsidiaries, and if these subsidiaries are operating, they are buying and selling or producing something, then they're not CFC. And I mean, they're CFC, but they are exempt CFC. And this is why there wouldn't be a problem with CFC taxation in Ukraine. If these foreign entities, foreign subsidiaries are receiving a lot of passive income like dividends, capital gains, or interest income, then of course the first requirement is these foreign subsidiaries need to have decision-making substance. And second requirement, because they are CFCs, it is important to have discipline in distribution of dividends. So let's say every year, all profits of these foreign subsidiaries need to be distributed to Ukraine. Only under this condition you can achieve tax-free profit distribution. If you delay your dividend distributions, then you have a risk of paying pretty much 20% CFC taxes on the Ukrainian holding level. And the second point to mention, I just repeat what I said a few minutes ago. If you take a foreign entity and make it Ukrainian for tax reasons, then between this individual and the holding structure, you can interpose some private wealth and asset protection mechanism. So you have, for example, a possibility to put a trust in between the individual and the holding company. And this gives you additional asset protection and additional succession planning solutions. You cannot do it, for example, with a Ukrainian company. If you take a Ukrainian limited liability company, you can't put a trust on top of it because Ukrainian legislation doesn't understand trusts. But you can take a foreign company, make it Ukrainian, and then the trust is achievable. Let's keep going.
And basically the last option is for the most complicated structures where you can afford substance abroad, and you do have some concentration of people, risks, and functions outside of Ukraine, which is a quite rare case, to be honest. Then you can create a real holding and benefit from all of these elements of legal and lawful tax base shifting from Ukraine to abroad, but only because you reserve these margins outside of the country. So here you might have some additional positive tax effect, but normally this is super complex and expensive to keep these structures running. Therefore, they would apply probably to only very big conglomerates of businesses. And of course, as I mentioned, the way to escape the problem, which is normally easier than to fix them in your home country, is migration. We have just highlighted the countries where it's quite realistic to live and to pay no or little taxes. And basically, we have some additional ones like Bulgaria or Hungary, just because of the low tax rates. But the idea is just to show you that you do have some choice geographically in terms of where to migrate. Of course, migration implies a long list of questions to solve, like creating clean capital, restructuring of the assets, and many other stuff. But migration is very often the good way, not just to get rid of the tax issues, but also to increase the quality of life in the EU country.
And when we say migration, we mean that you really have to move out. You take your family, you take your kids and pets, you close your house or rent it out, or you even sell it in Ukraine, and you really move to a different country. And it's not sufficient to just get an ID, a residence ID from another jurisdiction. It's not sufficient to get tax residence certificate from Cyprus and at the same time stay in Ukraine. Ukraine has very sophisticated tax residence rules. It's not sufficient even to spend 183 days outside Ukraine. If your family is still in Ukraine, you are Ukrainian tax resident. And that's why migration in this sense means full relocation of your family to another jurisdiction. And I would say places like Cyprus and Malta are probably popular as an interim short-term solution, but very, very rarely people live there. They can stay there for 1 or 2 years, but it's not easy to create a new home in these countries. And we see that mostly people relocate to the UK, to Switzerland, to Italy. Some people move to Portugal, and some people move to Monaco. These are the places where in tendency you can genuinely live and enjoy life rather than suffer. So that's why we have these few locations on the map to choose from. So I think that's it in terms of material. I think we can now shift to Q&A. I don't see too many questions. I see only 3 questions, but we ask you to ask more questions. If you do it in Zoom, go to Q&A. If you are in YouTube, I think you can also ask questions in YouTube, and we will try to answer them right away.
Yeah, and as always, you are free to ask questions completely unrelated to the topic of today's webinar. So yeah, whatever is on your mind, just put it in the window.
Let's start with first question.
Mm-hmm.
Sergey, I think take it yourself.
Question from Alexander. Lots of speculations already as to what would be the first reporting period deadline first to report. So I understand this is about the automatic exchange or
CFC. I think it's a CFC reporting deadline.
The second question from the same person is about the CFC. Yeah, the idea is that the CFC rules will become effective on the 1st January next year, 21. To be honest, I don't see too much contradictions between the opinions of different advisors. And the idea was that the first reporting period is 21, and you file first the notification on the existing CFC companies or structures within 60 days after the first event, which means that everything which exists, which survives as of 1st January next year has to be reported within following 60 days. And as regards the annual report on CFCs, they have to be filed the next year, so for 2021 in 2022. Again, 2 important comments here. First, there are no penalties for non-compliance with those rules in 2021 or 22. Which should not be, of course, speculated, but still just keep that in mind. And second, there is a big chance that the whole block of CFC rules will be postponed. So we might see the situation where the first period for CFC purposes would be 2023. Again, another related question is that any risk that Ukraine is blacklisted due to the exemption of foreign income for foreign entities voluntarily defined as Ukrainian tax residents? That's a very interesting question. Just for the explanation, what is it all about? If you take the foreign company, migrate it to Ukraine, literally the wording in the tax code is that anything which is foreign sourced income should not fall into the object of taxation for these Ukrainian tax resident. We have checked this issue quite specifically, and I would say that probably the risk is very low, because if you go to the definition of income sourced from abroad in the Ukrainian tax code, it says that like in the vast majority of cases, this would be the income which requires actual activities in the territory of the foreign country, which means that you basically have to have substance abroad, which is never the case. So I would say that this provision would not be really working in practice, simply because this status of foreign sourced income would require the physical activity outside of the country. But the rule is indeed very interesting, and we'll be very interested to see how it develops in practice.
There is a question in chat from Elena. She's asking in Russian if a company is issuing new shares to attract some investments, is it income or not? Well, actually, under old law and under new law, if you issue new shares to the investors who contribute capital into the structure, this is not income. This is simply additional capital contribution. if you do it this way. So newly issued shares go directly to the investors and they put capital into the company. If, however, you first issue new shares to the old shareholders, and then these old shareholders sell them to the new shareholders, of course, there will be capital gain and it will be already income. It will be taxable. I hope I answered the question.
Yeah, as Sergey mentioned, this is actually the old provision. So whenever the individual contributes some assets in exchange of the newly issued shares, regardless of whether this emittent of shares is Ukrainian or foreign, this is not taxed. Basically, we just slightly improved and added the situation, improved the provision, which says that you can also take these assets back as the capital reduction without the payment of tax. So we just continue the chain up to the moment where you extract capital back, because previously there was a big that these amounts are taxed.
No questions anymore, I think.
Yeah, maybe just to summarize, unless someone is asking additional questions, we will definitely repeat the content in Russian, just in case you would like to hear it in language which is quite close to the original Ukrainian one. I think we'll do that in course of the next week. Yeah, otherwise we have our slides in our news channel, which would be quite useful to check again if you want to have some details. Yeah, anything new?
There is one comment, which is either comment or question, that these new rules allow Ukrainian tax authorities to interpret transactions as they wish. Well, I think the law definitely gives to Ukrainian tax authorities a chance to reclassify transactions based on their economic logic. Because of the principal purpose test and because of constructive dividends, because of other new rules. And I think this is actually normal, you know, in every civilized tax system. Tax authorities can try, sometimes successfully, sometimes not, can look at your transactions and say, hey, you know, from legal standpoint, it's absolutely fine. Every document is correct. But if you look economically at what happened, it makes no sense. And this is why we reconstruct the chain of events. We totally ignore legal paperwork and we interpret the transactions as based on economic consequences. And it's quite normal. So I think in Ukraine, tax authorities are still pretty junior, and when they receive such a big power, of course, there is a risk. But on the other side, the legislation, when it comes to interpretation, is giving a lot of rights to the taxpayer. So the law specifically is saying that in almost all doubtful situations, a taxpayer's position is correct. So tax authorities really need to try hard to defend their argument. And I think as long as they learn over time, taxpayers will have less and less rights and tax authorities will have more and more rights. So let's say in 10 years, we will see a totally different Ukrainian tax system.
Yeah, maybe just additional, another related comment. During the lawmaking process, I have seen so many times where the people responsible for the final text were actually using the argument, no guys, this is a bit not black and white. The tax authorities who can exploit this for their own benefit, let's make this rule super strict and super simple. So there was indeed the intention. And just as a matter of example, if you bring the IFRS statement for your foreign CFC and attach the audit report, which has no reservation, which says, yeah, their financial statements are fine, the Ukrainian authority cannot challenge it. So it doesn't have a right to challenge the figures in the statements which were approved by the auditor. So of course, through the court, probably it's somehow possible, but it's super difficult. So it tightens the hands of the tax authority in this case. So for you, it would be just an additional cost of 3,000 per year to create this audit statement, audit report, but you'll be safe in terms of proving the figures. Very simple. So I don't really believe that the tax authorities have too much power, definitely much less than in Ukraine or other countries.
The next question concerns the time when courts and tax practice will be mature on this new legislation. Well, we actually don't expect any case law or any practice to come up in the early 2-3 years, simply because in 2021 the rules only begin to apply. In 2022, people will only start filing their first CFC returns. Also, information exchange will come only in 22, 23, 24. So in very early years, for the first 2-3 years, tax authorities will not even have anything to audit. Then don't forget that in Ukraine, tax audits on individuals are pretty rare. It's normal to go with a tax audit on Ukrainian company, but to hunt an individual is very rare. So in early days, tax authorities will look only at the corporate structure, so Ukrainian companies which own foreign entities. And from these situations, we will see first CFC practice. We will see first practice of place of effective management rules and PE rules. These will be mainly corporate cases. So let's say by the 5th year, after we have first corporate cases, tax authorities will start training or attempting on the individuals. So let's say in 2025, 2027, around that time, we will see first attempts on individuals. But it doesn't mean that taxpayers and business owners have 5 years to go and that they don't have to do anything because there is no practice. Actually, Ukrainian tax authorities is not the first evil that you have to fight with. The biggest problems will come from your financial institutions, from the banks, asset managers, trustees. These guys, under foreign anti-money laundering rules, have to make sure that you are tax compliant. So today, Ukraine in most banks is labeled as a low-risk jurisdiction from tax standpoint, simply because rules are super primitive, and in most cases, you don't have to. If you have a foreign entity, you don't have to disclose and pay taxes. As soon as Ukraine introduces CFC law, it is pushed in the hierarchy from primitive tax jurisdiction to complicated tax jurisdiction. So it will be more or less equal to Russia, US, and Germany in terms of tax complexity. And it means that banks will start chasing you. Your trustees, your company administrators will start chasing you and forcing you to prove that your structure is disclosed, that you as a shareholder, individual, settlor, beneficiary of the structure, that you are tax compliant, that you did your disclosures, that you filed your tax returns and paid your taxes. If you cannot prove it, they will make a lot of noise and you will have a lot of troubles. So the immediate troublemaker is not Ukrainian tax authority. It's really the anti-money laundering rules of Switzerland, UK, Luxembourg, and other jurisdictions.
Yeah, because we don't have any questions more, I will probably very shortly develop on this reply to Elena. Timing is indeed of essence, and it's very important to not to lose this window of opportunities. The law was made in a pretty balanced way, so that on one side the rules are tightened and you cannot just use offshores to escape from taxation or keep confidentiality. But at the same time, there's a huge block of rules which allows taxpayers go through this process quite smoothly, and even to save taxes on your future income. That's why like our recommendation is not to wait until this practice establishes in 5 years, because at that moment of time, if you do nothing, you will have a lot of violations historically, and you'll be punished for that for sure. But use this opportunity to fix your structure and to find yourself with a clean new story starting already either this or next year, so that you sleep well, you know that you don't have any historical troubles you can be punished for, and you used all the opportunities which the law directly gave you.
Yeah, I see that in Zoom participants, we only have Russian or speakers. So I see we have mainly names who I assume speak Russian. In YouTube, we have a declining population of people who view us. So I suggest that we switch off YouTube. And if people still want, we can continue shortly for the next 10 minutes, some Q&A only in Zoom. So YouTube people, we're very sorry. We kick you out. We will still put our video to our Telegram channel, so you can watch it later. And thank you for participating. So I stop live streaming. И теперь мы можем быстренько переключиться на русский. Если у кого-то есть вопросы по-русски, мы можем на них быстро ответить. Вопросов по-прежнему нет. Мы дадим время написать. Если что, можем отключаться.
Да, собственно, мы главное сообщение, я думаю, донесли. Слайды вам для домашнего чтения. Ну и я думаю, что мы постараемся собрать еще чуть больше аудитории все-таки русскоязычную, потому что касается это прежде всего русскоязычных людей, чтобы в течение недельки еще рассказать все то же самое с акцентом на родном языке.
Порог в 2 миллиона, доход или прибыль? Да, это все-таки доход, да, то есть в законе о доходе речь идет. То есть если вы получаете дивиденды, купонный доход, это все увеличивает ваш порог. Если вы зарабатываете на capital гейнах, здесь есть, в общем-то, основания сказать, что сам capital gain – это и есть доход. То есть для примера, если вы купили актив за 2 миллиона и продали его за 3 миллиона, то с точки зрения дохода у вас 3 минус 2, то есть всего лишь 1 миллион. Но понятно, что здесь нужно смотреть на то, как сделана ваша финансовая отчетность. IFRS, как правило, показывает только сумму гейна, да, то есть только вот эта разница, единичка, 3 минус 2, идет вам в доходную часть. Вот. Бывают бухгалтерские системы, бухгалтерские принципы, где вы должны показать 3 миллиона как доход, минус 2 миллиона как расход. В этой ситуации вы, конечно, моментально попадаете, потому что ваши 3 миллиона дохода превышают порог, который установлен для КИКа, и тогда весь ваш КИК теперь становится облагаемым.
Тут смотрите, что очень важно подчеркнуть, что, например, в России речь идет только о прибыли, и для целей освобождения от, в принципе, налогообложения по правилам КИК, и для целей определения базы, с которой налог платится. В Украине немножко другая ситуация, чуть-чуть более сложная. Получается, что, с одной стороны, есть порог, который в виде дохода исчисляется, и он определяет, что если вы не превысили доход, то все, о налогах забудьте, ничего платить не надо. Но если вы превысили этот порог, тогда мы уже берем отчетность КИКа, именно берем прибыль, тут доход не имеет никакого значения, то есть мы учитываем все, берем чисто прибыль и с нее оплачиваем налог. Поэтому вот эти 2 миллиона дохода — это исключительно критерий для определения, надо вообще платить по правилам КИК налог или нет. И вот то, что Сергей сказал, мы в конечном итоге, поскольку отчетность по МСФО готовится, нам нужно понимать, как это именно по МСФО будет высчитываться, да, то есть тут мы можем, украинские правила здесь ни при чем, мы все равно применяем вот эти международные стандарты, и поэтому доход где-то может быть, это и доход, где-то может быть это и прибыль, в общем, нужно смотреть по ситуации.
Дальше вопрос от Тамары. Если у КИК есть нераспределенные дивиденды за прошедшие периоды, они теперь будут объектом налогообложения у контролирующей особы? И да, и нет. Смотрите, если у физлица, да, украинского резидента, есть, скажем, BVI-ка, у этой BVI-ки за последние 20 лет накопилось 100 миллионов прибыли, да, то тогда та прибыль, что накоплена до 2021 года, то есть до декабря 2020 года, она под правила КИК не попадает. Только новая прибыль, которая начала зарабатываться с января 2021 года, попадает под эти новые правила. И новую прибыль облагать нужно будет. Но тут смотрите, какая штука, что когда вот эти накопленные 100 миллионов на BVI компании есть, в случае, если физлицо когда-нибудь захочет их себе забрать, потратить на сахар, икру и хлеб или на приобретение какого-нибудь замечательного актива, ему нужно сначала эти 100 миллионов себе распределить, заплатив в Украине налоги. Вот именно для этого нужна безналоговая ликвидация, чтобы эти 100 миллионов получить себе бесплатно. И еще по поводу нераспределенной прибыли, очень популярны были многоярусные структуры, да, когда у вас на самом верху физлицо, под ним какая-нибудь там BVI-ка, под BVI-кой Сейшелка, под Сейшелкой Маврикий, под Маврикием Джерси и так далее и тому подобное. Потом это все не спадает до какого-нибудь Кипра. И так у вас может быть 5, 6, 7, 8 структур. Так вот, в этой ситуации у вас очень запросто старая прибыль будет облагаться, потому что если, скажем, на нижнем уровне, на какой-нибудь там 10-й BVI в самом низу, у вас есть там 10 миллионов нераспределенной прибыли, которые вы накопили за последние 20 лет, то в момент, когда эта старая прибыль поднимается наверх, на следующий уровень, допустим, с 4-го уровня на 3-й этаж, в этот момент у 3-го этажа возникает новый доход 2021 года или там 22-го, 23-го, 24-го года, да? И, соответственно, вот эта нераспределенная прибыль превращается в новые деньги. И они уже под КИК очень даже замечательным образом попадают. То есть, что нужно сейчас делать, как одна из мер по подготовке к вступлению в силу этого закона, это сделать такую возгонку всех ваших нераспределенных дивидендов до максимально верхней точки. Даже если у вас, скажем, есть украинская компания, над ней кипрская компания, а дальше череда каких-то BVI-ек, даже из этой украинской компании сейчас выгодно вытащить дивиденды по максимуму на Кипр и выше до самого верхнего слоя, и вот этот уже верхний слой убить через безналоговую ликвидацию, чтобы человек получил себе все активы бесплатно, без налогов. Да? То есть вот эта многослойность, она может привести к большим проблемам.
Да, есть еще вопрос, насколько налоговая амнистия подтолкнет украинцев ликвидировать свой бизнес в иностранных юрисдикциях? Остается 1,5 года. Какие послабления для налогоплательщиков, которые подпадают под эти нормы? Смотрите, для ясности, налоговая амнистия и безналоговая ликвидация — это две совершенно разных вещи. Налоговая амнистия — это то, что еще не приняли, и пока непонятно даже, в каком виде оно будет. Налоговая амнистия касается декларирования доходов старых периодов физлиц, то есть именно персонального дохода физлиц за периоды там, вплоть до конца 2019 года. Вот если вы когда-то давно получили доход и не заплатили с него налог, вы можете пойти сдаться, раскрыть эту информацию и заплатить налог там не 10 или 20%, а 2,5 и 5. Скорее всего, эта максимальная ставка будет 5%. То есть это налоговая амнистия для физлиц. Когда мы говорим...
Именно для их персонального дохода. Если физлицо заработало прибыль где-то на BVI, в какой-то офшорке, то это не персональный доход. Такие доходы под амнистию не попадают категорически.
Да. И вот именно понимая это, мы когда встречались с важными людьми, мы сказали, что, ребята, вам эта амнистия, как бы, она вообще никому не поможет, она бесполезная. Нас поняли со второго раза, и мы в итоге сказали, что у нас есть альтернатива, как все-таки сделать возможным ликвидирование этих структур без каких-то налоговых ужасов. И именно была придумана налоговая ликвидация для этих целей. То есть мы говорим о том, что если у вас был вот этот доход не персональный, а внутри иностранных организаций, то сейчас вы можете убить все эти лишние слои, то есть вот вся эта цепочка между физлицом и реальным активом, там, домом, яхтой, бизнесом и так далее, их надо убивать, и физлицо получает персональный, новый, свежий доход, но при этом не платит с этого налоги, потому что это прямое освобождение в законе. Вот и в этом самая большая прелесть, потому что если вы не сделаете ничего, и вы захотите эти активы получить в будущих периодах, вы минимум потратите 10,5% на налоги от рыночной стоимости этих активов. Поэтому вот эта безналоговая ликвидация, это просто реально панацея, по моему мнению. И что крайне важно, вот эта единственная цена за эту безналоговость, это раскрытие данных украинской налоговой, но эти данные там и так окажутся на год позже через автообмен. Поэтому все, что вы делаете, вы просто добровольно предоставляете данные о том, что и так раскроется, но при этом экономите минимум 10% от реальной рыночной сегодняшней стоимости всех активов.
Следующий интересный вопрос. Если кипрский холдинг становится налоговым резидентом Украины и перестает быть КИК, ее кипрская дочерняя компания остается КИК? Да, безусловно. То есть если у вас двухслойная кипрская структура и верхушка переезжает в Украину, а низушка остается, то она, конечно же, по умолчанию является КИКом. Но здесь нужно посмотреть на более даже важный вопрос, а кто у вас в этой нижней кипрской компании остался? Да? То есть действительно ли на Кипре сидят такие мозговитые, умные люди, которые прям руководят каким-то бизнесом и что-то там воротят, да, скорее всего, это не так, скорее всего, на Кипре есть некая потемкинская деревня с каким-то номинальным директором, и это дает возможность украинским налоговикам прийти и сказать, знаете, это никакой не КИК, это вообще украинская компания, хоть на ней стоит кипрский флаг. И то, что вы украинизировали верхушку, даст налоговикам карт-бланш. Они скажут, чем ваша верхняя компания отличается от нижней компании. Да? Все руководство находится в Украине. Дочерка вообще сама по себе никаких мыслей не имеет и решений не принимает. Поэтому мы ее тоже украинизируем. И раз уж вы не сделали это добровольно, мы сделаем это насильно. И один еще важный момент, если мы говорим о переезде уже существующих компаний, да, то нужно смотреть, что при этом будет происходить в Кипре. Потому что существует такая концепция, как exit taxation, налог на выход. И вот если говорить, например, о Кипре, и если в этой кипрской компании только акции и там, дочерние какие-то структуры, да, то тогда вы можете с Кипра уехать, не заплатив каких-то дополнительных налогов. Но если у вас на Кипре, допустим, какие-то права интеллектуальной собственности, которые создают royalty income, или какие-то там, другие активы, да, не акции, то тогда при выезде с Кипра с вас попытаются снять 12,5% налога на выход. Если вы мигрируете не простецкий Кипр, а берете какую-нибудь существующую голландскую структуру, люксембургскую, швейцарскую и так далее, то в момент переезда в Украину местная налоговая скажет вам, ребята, вот вся та стоимость рыночная, которую вы сейчас сформировали при переезде на Украину, будет обложена и налогом на продажу, и налогом на дивиденды. Да, то есть вот старой компании, которая проработала какое-то время, уехать через налоговое резидентство в Украине довольно трудно. Ну, то есть возможно, но это довольно часто приводит к каким-то дополнительным налогам. А вот если вы создадите компанию с нуля, и тут же, буквально на следующий день, придете к местной кипрской или голландской, или швейцарской, или люксембургской налоговой и скажете, ребята, у нас тут нет местных директоров, у нас все директора сидят в Киеве. вот тогда все взятки гладкие. Вы можете спокойно эту компанию переселить в Украину, и никто вам слова не скажет. Но, конечно, нужно сначала с налоговой местной обо всем договориться, чтобы они, не дай бог, не считали эту украинизированную компанию все еще своей. Иначе у вас будет двойной резидент, и будут налоги и там, и там.
Да, еще один вопрос. Вот смотрите, по четкости, да, по срокам. Вопрос от Дарьи по поводу того, когда что нужно закрывать. Для участия в безналоговой ликвидации по срокам есть два требования. Надо вовремя начать и вовремя закончить. Значит, вовремя начать означает принять решение о запуске ликвидации в 2020 году. Вовремя закончить означает успеть закончить либо в 2020, либо в 2021. Причем закончить в 2020 вам нужно тогда, когда вы не успели запустить процесс ликвидации в первом полугодии, а закончить в 2021 вам разрешается, если вы успели запустить процесс в первом полугодии. То есть, если упрощенно, если вы начали процесс ликвидации в первом полугодии этого года, то у вас есть время до конца 2021 года. Если вы не успели в первом полугодии, то вы должны успеть в 2020. Вот. Может быть, логика немножко исковеркана. Там еще есть пару случаев, когда вам разрешают чуть-чуть дольше даже ликвидироваться. Но это обычно, когда есть там процедуры судебные какие-то. Можете почитать закон. Но суть в том, что мы всем советуем для того, чтобы не играться с огнем, на всякий случай запустить процедуру в первом полугодии и быть спокойны, что у вас есть еще 1,5 года на завершение процесса.
Да, вообще, конечно, те люди, получается, кто читал 12.10 закон еще в законопроекте и надеялись на эту норму, они уже имели возможность запустить эти процессы безналоговой ликвидации и, в общем-то, уже к этому готовы. Но, конечно, большинство выжидало до последнего, подпишет Зеленский, не подпишет, и поэтому сейчас у нас остался реально только 1 месяц. При этом нужно понимать, что когда вы запускаете процесс ликвидации, хоть этот процесс и отзываемый, да, вы можете его там притормозить, остановить, но очень многие вещи становятся недоступными. Да, допустим, если вы запускаете, допустим, ликвидацию BVI-компании, то уже регистраторы обычно отказываются менять у этой BVI-компании акционеров. То есть, например, у вас двухслойная структура, и вы пытаетесь ликвидировать нижнюю BVI-ку и верхнюю BVI-ку. Когда вы запускаете процесс одновременно, вы не можете ликвидировать верхнюю компанию, перенеся наверх нижнюю, потому что регистраторы скажут: ребята, эта компания внизу находится в процессе ликвидации, мы не будем трогать ее акции, потому что не имеем права, да. И вот тут вот вы можете глухо попасть, потому что не сможете сделать реорганизацию в той последовательности, в которой хотели. То есть прежде чем вы примете решение о ликвидации, нужно посмотреть, в каких юрисдикциях у вас возникают подобные ограничения, а в каких нет. И от этого продумать пошаговость ваших действий. Да. Ликвидировать одну компанию легко, ликвидировать сеть компаний в разы сложнее.
Да, еще вот вопрос по поводу сроков ликвидации, вопрос хороший. Он всегда, естественно, зависит от конкретной компании, какие у нее активы, обязательства там и так далее. Но, грубо говоря, все офшорки, то есть это BVI, Белизы, Маршаллы всякие и так далее, это вопрос без спешки месяц-полтора. Вот лично мой рекорд 14 дней на BVI, например. Да, но вот такие юрисдикции обычно это месяц-полтора при условии, что у вас адекватный директор и в будущем, скорее всего, ликвидационный управляющий. Что многие, чувствуя наживу, говорят: давай-ка ты мне там откупных заплатишь 20 тысяч, и тогда я отпущу компанию. То есть таких очень часто попадается много не консультантов, а администраторов, поэтому имейте это в виду. Но если все идет гладко, то месяц-полтора вам хватит. А если мы говорим о более развитых юрисдикциях там в Евросоюзе, то обычно это от года до 1,5, поэтому вот как раз впритык время есть, если вы успеете запустить процедуру ликвидации в первом полугодии.
Да, может, еще несколько таких практических примеров. Смотрите, когда вы запускаете ликвидацию, допустим, примитивной BVI-компании, то большинство администраторов, они говорят: ребят, мы отказываемся выступать как ликвидаторы. Почему? Потому что в этой компании полно активов. Мы готовы выступать ликвидаторами пустой компании. Так что будьте добры, сначала распределите из нее все активы в качестве дивидендов, а потом мы ее пустую на здоровье ликвидируем. Да? Вот это большущая проблема, потому что когда вы сначала распределите дивиденды, а потом заявляете о ликвидации, назначаете ликвидатора, то все ваше распределение не безналоговая ликвидация, а обычное обложение, и в Украине по полной программе будет облагаться. Да? То есть многие администраторы тупо отказываются ликвидировать. То есть будет самый головняк — это найти администраторов, которые скажут: да, мы согласны быть ликвидаторами компаний с активами. Да? Они просто не хотят ответственность на себе нести, потому что роль ликвидатора очень серьезная с юридической точки зрения. Ликвидатор должен убедиться, что все кредиторы счастливы, если они вообще есть, что все процедуры соблюдены. И, конечно же, для администраторов проще ликвидировать пустую компанию, потому что нет рисков, а деньги есть. Да? А вот найти людей, которые готовы взять за деньги риск, их очень мало. Да? И мы, когда делали эти безналоговые ликвидации для россиян, мы там исколесили и вперед практически весь рынок. С какими-то людьми вы можете BVI-ку ликвидировать 2 года, а с какими-то вы можете ликвидировать за 3 дня. Вот, Сереж, у тебя рекорд 14 дней, а у меня 3.
Серьезно?
Это было в декабре 28 числа между Рождеством и Новым годом. 3 дня на ликвидацию. Но врагу не пожелаю, ни Рождества, ни Нового года не было из-за этого.
Ну вот я скажу, Сергей, да, вот эта история очень поучительная и важная, но я бы сказал, что все-таки, наверное, самая распространенная проблема — это когда администраторы чувствуют запах крови и пытаются просто нажиться в последний момент, что они теряют хлеб, они теряют бизнес, да, дойную корову. И вот у меня только пример был, вот буквально вчера я общался с клиентом, он поговорил со своим администратором на Белизе, задал вопрос, сколько будет ликвидировать. Ему назвали, по-моему, значит, 5000 за услуги и 8 месяцев работы. Он позвонил мне, я ему объяснил ситуацию, говорю, это делается месяц, стоит там в 3 раза дешевле. Чувак перезвонил им, говорит, что вы за, типа, идиоты мне навешали лапши? Я вот проконсультировался, говорит, ладно, за месяц и за 1500 сделаем. То есть вот просто достаточно, как бы, иногда достаточно на правильном языке поговорить с этими людьми, но когда, конечно, возникает ситуация, и люди чувствуют, что их наказать не смогут, то вот это проблема. То есть в лучшем случае вы просто откупитесь деньгами, забрать компанию другим администраторам.
Да, вот тоже по примеру безналоговых ликвидаций в России мы знаем случаи, когда в ноябре-декабре, да, уже вот когда срок последний подступает, и ликвидаторы, которые готовы работать, выдавали просто космические цифры. Допустим, там, я помню, 50 тысяч называли за ликвидацию одной компании. То есть люди начинают просто делать деньги, потому что это их последние деньги. Они понимают, что если раньше они администрировали там 20-30 компаний, то сейчас, может быть, максимум им достанется какая-нибудь одна компания, и то ли если сильно повезет. Поэтому, конечно же, они пытаются заработать. Еще очень важно, и это, наверное, гораздо более важно даже, чем вовремя запустить процесс ликвидации, вам нужно подготовить отчетность. И для того, чтобы сработала безналоговая ликвидация, ваша отчетность должна быть по МСФО. Вы не можете просто нарисовать на коленке учет BVI и сказать: все, у меня есть безналоговая ликвидация. Вы должны сделать МСФО. Не обязательно делать аудит, но вот отчетность обязательно. И без отчетности у вас просто не получится никакой безналоговой ликвидации. Большинство, естественно, людей никогда не вело никакой отчетности ни на BVI-ках, ни где-то еще. В лучшем случае, если у них кипрские компании, у них делается МСФО, но на Кипре это тоже же занимает огромное время. То есть в лучшем случае, вот у вас сейчас есть кипрская компания, сейчас 2020 год, скорее всего, ваши кипрские аудиторы только-только еле допилили 2017 год и, может быть, там приступают к аудиту 2018 года. Да, в лучшем случае. А есть ситуации, когда кипрские компании без аудита находятся 4-5 лет. Вы никогда не сможете ликвидировать такую компанию за установленные законом 3 месяца. Да, вообще на Кипре, отвечая опять же за предыдущий вопрос, самое рекордное время ликвидации, которое у меня было, это с сентября по конец января, да, то есть это сколько? Сентябрь, октябрь, ноябрь, декабрь, январь, 5 месяцев, это рекорд. И то пришлось задействовать суд для того, чтобы суд принудительно позволил сократить срок обязательной ликвидации до 5 месяцев, да, то есть пришлось тяжелую артиллерию применять. В классике жанра Кипр ликвидируется до 12 месяцев, иногда это даже занимает 1,5-2 года. То есть если у вас не готовая отчетность, не готовая не готовы декларации, не заплачены налоги, если ваш администратор тупит и хочет вас подоить напоследок, то вот готовьте 2 года. Это значит, что вы либо не успеете, либо не успеете. Да? То есть, как пить дать, нужно запускать эту безналоговую ликвидацию вот-вот в течение июня.
Да, я думаю, что нам можно потихоньку закругляться. Всем спасибо большое за активное участие. Будут вопросы, обращайтесь. И очень надеюсь, что мы совместными усилиями все успеем.
Всем хорошего вечера. Счастливо.
Счастливо.